The Ohio State defense hasn't given up a touchdown in 2 games. They have a Buckeyes semifinalist at linebacker. The vibes are strong overall, except those linebackers are pissed off.
Yeah.
That started on Saturday. They immediately went to James Laurinaitis and said, we need to tackle better. Cody Simon and Sonny Styles I'm talking about. And that has been the emphasis this week. They are wanting to shore up the fundamentals heading into this final 3-game stretch of the regular season. These are snap judgments. That's Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. Sonny and Cody backed that up. Weren't happy about the 5 missed tackles on Saturday.
No, I like that Sonny Styles said, like, yeah, we got to shut up, but they shouldn't have been in the red zone. It's like, all right, man, like, it's good to have high standards, but give yourself a little bit of a break. No, I mean, you watch that game and honest assessments, like they definitely missed too many tackles in that game. I don't know that it's been like a season-long issue for Ohio State, but something you want to clean up immediately. And it seems like Cody Simon, who is, in my opinion, like very much the heart and soul of his defense and its unquestioned leader, is the guy who is kind of championing that. And it's good to have Sonny Styles kind of as his running mate there. Like, those are 2 guys that I think have played well, and especially Sonny, but Cody too, like, have gotten consistently better over the course of the season too. So when it's coming from those guys who have kind of, in my opinion, like left no stone unturned as they've tried to get better each year, I think that carries probably a little more weight to it.
Yeah, the difficult balancing act at this time of year. It's November. You don't want these 2 guys who've logged hundreds of snaps, who have 120 some tackles between them. Like, you don't need them to go hit. You don't want to start hitting Ohio State offensive players either. So, it's trying to figure out how to do that. Both Cody Simon and Sonny Styles were describing, it doesn't have to be the physical act of hitting. It can be, some of this is just basic stuff, that you're going through with footwork and, wrapping up, thudding, things of that sort. Like, it has not, to your point, Bill, been a season-long issue for Ohio State at linebacker. There have been pockets. There's ups and downs as you go through any year. Against Penn State, Ohio State had 4 missed tackles total.
Yeah.
18 against Purdue is not what you want, but there were a lot of moving pieces. It was different schemes. I'm not going to make excuses for anyone or try and justify it. They were the first ones to throw up their hands and say, that can't happen again. And they've worked to try and, get that fixed in practice this week.
I like, too, that so Cody Simon, who's played, I think, incredibly well, is deserving of being on the semifinalist list.
You don't say.
Even though he wasn't. Was it the Buckeyes Award? Yeah. For best linebacker. That's neither here nor there, I suppose. He was asked,
write him in, America.
Yeah, you can write him in. I think I don't vote for that one. I vote for the Bednarik. I did put Jeremiah Smith among my semifinalists. I hope I can say that. If not, you didn't hear it from me.
It's a secret.
Yeah, it's a secret. Cody was asked, like, hey, do you think you're playing your best football? And I think maybe like in an honest moment, he might say yes, because he is. I think that's evident to everybody. But he's like, he wouldn't even entertain the notion. And then he was like, as a defense, we haven't played our best yet. That's all I care about, right? So he's holding – the coaches do it too, right? But it's better when it's player-led to hold this team to an incredibly high standard. But it's coming from all over the place. Ryan Day said, like, he's still challenging the defense. He said it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be fast and it has to be violent. And that kind of feels like maybe the message coming off the practice field on the Tuesday. It's like, obviously execute better, but bring a little something to the table when you're doing it too. Make them feel you out there on the field, which is like, good luck Northwestern, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the violent part, we know that Ohio State has talked about that since training camp. The fast part, these are the most one of the most gifted rosters that you're going to find in college football. They can do both of those things, but I think it's one thing for Ohio State to talk about playing aggressively and being willing to accept some mistakes, which they clearly did when they were experimenting some with the jack specifically. And we've maybe talked about it too much. Maybe there's a case that you could talk about it more because of what it could still be for this team down the stretch as you project that forward, maybe for Saturday at Wrigley Field against Northwestern. But that wasn't the way that anybody was describing the Ohio State defense even going into the Oregon game. And now you're just looking at whether that's the number of blitzes or the varying of the fronts or being, the way that some of these players are rallying to the football right now, even when you don't make the tackle, it's really impressive. And we'll see if they can continue that. But all the signs for that defense, and not just giving up no touchdowns for 2 weeks, are trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, it probably, if you think about the way the season has transpired, it's like you go through the first handful of games, more than that, where no one's really challenging you, right? And then the first time you get on the field against a team that has like-for-like athletes, you don't put your best foot forward. And a couple of guys got put into a spotlight and didn't perform all that well against Oregon, right? So sometimes you need that kick in the butt, I guess, right? You'd prefer that it happens still with a win and not with a loss if you're Ohio State. But it does really feel like the defense has a bit of a different mindset, that they have felt challenged since that game. I think it's clear that Ryan Day has challenged them, starting at the top and then through the rest of the coaching staff. And thus far, they've responded well. I'm not telling anybody that the tests they faced since then have been anything remotely close to what Oregon presented them and what Oregon might present to them if Ohio State sees them again. But all you can do is kind of take care of business against who you've played since then. And even though they have been mostly overmatched opponents, I still think the defense has played with a different level of aggression and speed and like havoc to it in these last handful of games than they did in the handful prior to Oregon.
Well, once you get to midweek and a Woody Wednesday, that's about the time that some nitpicking starts. But this one is at least coming, like, generated from Ohio State on Saturday. The missed tackle is something that is front of mind for them, and you can understand why. Like, this is the silver bullets are ultimately going to determine whether this team wins a championship, in my opinion. Like, they're going to score enough points. They're going to have to hang on the offensive line, which we know what all of that looks like. But Ohio State needs its defense to perform in the biggest games, and you can't really argue with the results. But the process, I think the Buckeyes are still trying to improve, which you want. You still have a lot of games ahead of you if you're Ohio State. So, and a lot of practices. You don't want to take any of that for granted. That's the defensive conversation. Did you take anything away from Ryan Day with the lightning round?
I thought maybe the most noteworthy thing, kind of aside from the message to the defense, I asked about Will Kazmarek, who I didn't see him come off the practice field, which is part of the reason why I asked, but I have bad vision, and I can't clock everybody. But I said, like, is Will back practicing? Or I asked if Will was back practicing. And Ryan Day said, yes, he's back. He's doing limited stuff, mostly individual work, but that he remains ahead of schedule, and that they are expecting him, I think, to be a full participant in practice next week coming off of the Northwestern game, which I think probably tracks with what we've heard all along. Just want to make sure there weren't any setbacks there. So I don't know if that means they're expecting him to play against Indiana or not, but I don't know. The vibe I picked up from that is that maybe he's got a pretty good shot of doing so.
Yeah, it seems like that, the timeline that was laid out, that could go up to Saturday. Like, that might be the topic of conversation, is the health status of Will Kazmarek next week. Or maybe it'll just be simple. It's like he could be available in an emergency on Saturday, which is sort of the way that this has worked out, because we also had a conversation separately about Lathan Ransom's return, and he talked about that with Tyleik Williams and the way that they've managed these situations where guys could go, and they have been erring on the side of caution, which I think maybe with Lathan they kind of pushed it a little bit because of the nature of the Penn State game, but not to put anybody in harm's way. And Will Kazmarek would, ideally, if he's close, would you like to get some rust off before Indiana? Maybe you would, but not in a game against a team like Northwestern, where you're unlikely to need him, and especially because Jelani Thurman was available after practice on Wednesday night as well. And it's like, you're putting the onus on him and Bennett Christian that they have to perform and deliver, and I think increasingly they have. So, they can get by on Saturday. Like, they're 30-point favorites. Like, they should get by against Northwestern, and so, don't expect to see him necessarily on Saturday at 11 a.m. Central Time, but certainly getting close.
Yeah, I guess we'll see if he even travels, right? I don't. Maybe he will. We'll see. I don't know. Ryan Day also, I thought, gave an interesting answer about Jelani Thurman, that they feel like they've been putting more on his plate, and he's responded well to that. But I didn't actually hear any of what Jelani said. Were you there with him?
Yeah. He's it's kind of like a conversation about, he joked about getting 4 catches, and he said that he would take the stats for that. He's glad, and he made the catch. It wasn't ultimately a drop in the box score, but he joked about it. He knew that was coming, or at least he had a nice comedic answer ready to go, and made several references to that. But also he's moved past it. Tim May asked him if he remembered if the ball was deflected, if that made the catch more challenging. He's like, I don't remember. Like, he's moving on, and made another catch again on Saturday against Purdue. So I think, this is something that you and Berm especially have talked about over the last couple of years. Like, can't you just take some of these chances and find out? If it's 5 snaps, if it's 10 snaps, it doesn't have to be a crazy amount, but in circumstances to learn what you have. Because with Jelani specifically, a lot of the conversation has been he has not been ready to do the blocking responsibilities. Fine. I mean, was he useful on a 4th down? Did he get another first down or another opportunity the next time you threw it? Yeah, I think he's capable of doing that. But again, at this time last year, we were also saying he's not getting on the field a ton because the hands weren't consistent. So it's all been a work in progress for him as he goes through this development process. But what helps speed it up sometimes? Game reps.
Yeah, I think I think that the staff clearly trusts him more, right? Like they made him the third progression on a 3-man route and like a pivotal down against Penn State on the road. Like they had other tight ends they could have put in that position, or even another receiver they could have put in that position, and they put Jelani there. And regardless of how the catch might have happened, he made the catch at the end, right? And then he made another one.
All of them.
Yeah, he made all of them. And he made one last week. So Ryan Day said that they need him to play well, and they're expecting to use him more and more. And I think that's a conversation even with the return of Will Kacmarek, because I do think maybe they have embraced the idea of what you just said, which is he's a big target we can throw the ball to. We're not saying go play him 40 snaps, because maybe you run into some problems if you do that. But if you can be opportunistic about getting a guy like that involved, then why not do it? Because you also never know what it might spark in a guy too, right? Jelani Thurman might have 3 catches and a touchdown against Northwestern, and then 2 years from now we're looking back like, remember that Northwestern game in 2024 when Jelani started to take off kind of thing? So like I think it's good that they're using him now. Clearly it was born out of an injury, and I guess that's okay. But regardless of how it's happened, he seems to be making the most of it. He's
been pretty consistently as well, one of the last people off the practice field on Wednesdays when we're in the Woody. Mm-hmm. And then you listen to him talk and joke around. Like, guy has always seemed to really love football and being around it. And I think sometimes there's just, with the nature of college football now, you wonder, it's been a year and a half. He's pretty deep into year 2. Like, is he unhappy? Is he frustrated? What's going to happen with NIL and the portal and the other thing? Like, my read on the situation, which we have a limited window into that, is that the frustration that maybe some people have, whether that's the media projecting, like wanting him to take the next step, or fans that are expecting that if you're following his recruitment, like, I don't think that Jelani is frustrated. I think he has a good idea of where he is in the progression and what that might mean with, again, over half of a football season potentially still available for Ohio State.
Yeah, I think he said as much. Like previous times we talked to him, again, I didn't hear all what he said today, but I think there probably was a time last year where he was frustrated, and I think every freshman encounters that. And it's like, okay, you're here now. What's next, kind of thing. And for some guys, it's like, see ya, I'm going to the portal, right? Sure. Because you can do that now. And for him, I think it was an understanding of the opportunity that was going to be available to him might be better than anywhere else, even if it might take longer for him to get it here. And I think he is now, like, slowly but surely being rewarded for, I don't even want to call it patience, because it is the
because it's year 2.
It's the definition of impatience to think you should be playing every snap as a true freshman. But perspective, maybe, I think is maybe the more apt way to describe it. But I think he does seem to be in a pretty good place from what I've seen.
Okay. Anything else?
No, Carson Hinsman talked. I didn't catch all of his either. I mean, he was talking a lot about what I did hear, the struggles of last year, and even his freshman year, he said was like pretty tough for him. He didn't get on the field that year, but I think he was getting his butt kicked pretty good on scout team and in practice, which is like, every young offensive lineman, I'm sure, goes through that. But sure. I think feeling much better about his own capabilities now that he has gone through that. And he said that the game, just every guy in his position says it, but it feels much slower to him now than it did a year ago. I think part of that is not having to play center, not having to make calls, not having to snap the ball and then play offensive lineman. You just remove a couple of those things from the equation. I think life becomes a little more simple for you up front. So, another guy just seems like very sort of like content and composed and comfortable with the spot that he's in right now.
Yeah. It was a pretty straightforward night overall. I think if we're talking about Wednesday, midweek, Northwestern vibes, the one that kept coming up was, I think the conversation that's being had is win out November.
Yep.
Heard that a bunch of times, and I'm not questioning that at all. It's a catchy mantra, but it also flies in the face of like one game at a time. And I'm not saying that's a complaint, to nitpick, to like whatever. It's interesting what message resonates at what time for Ohio State, because this week's is very different than last week's.
It is, yeah. We've also heard a little bit of a reversion, I guess, back to it's about us. It's not about the opponent, right? Whatever gets you there. Like, it's fine. They're 19 to 24-year-olds, I guess now, in some cases, but or 23-year-olds. But like we said on Tuesday, you got to freshen it up a little bit. But I think now that Ryan Day was clearly guarding against complacency last week going into the Purdue game. And I think once he saw his team respond appropriately to that, maybe he realized he doesn't have to quite push that button. Mm-hmm. But he is pushing the button very much so of like, we're in November. If we lose again, we're not going to Indianapolis, even if it is Northwestern in front of you. Like, this is a playoff game.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. This last week was Purdue. It was a one-off, isolated, motivational message, and now it's like, okay, you're going to see the finish line. They're humans.
Yeah,
they're younger humans, and they're going to be emotional. They're going to play with some of that intensity, and they're going to take their cue from their leader. But if you've now said, okay, got past Purdue, we treated that appropriately, acted accordingly, now it's playoff time again. Because I think that's an easier sell right now.
Yeah.
You're going on the road. There's going to be the brotherhood part and the bonding and all those sorts of things. And, everyone, wants to have the bat in their hands in the bottom of the ninth. So you treat that with the urgency that it requires.
Yeah. Or you can just score a bunch of runs in the first and not have to worry about the ninth.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Well, that's a good tip. Bill Landis suggesting Ohio State start fast and get the game against Northwestern at Wrigley Field over as fast as possible. I guess I'll second that. That's a great call. These have been Snap Judgments. He is Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. Thanks so much for joining us on a Woody Wednesday. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning. It'll be a 3 Things Thursday on the Podcast Daily. I'll see you there.